Welcome to the Potter's House of Moreno Valley live stream. I want to say welcome to all of our church family as well as our first-time visitors. As you know, public gatherings have been temporarily canceled, but that doesn't mean the church has been canceled. And it's only because of your generosity that we're able to serve you, whether in the sanctuary or on the live stream. So, if you'd like to partner with us in spreading the gospel as far and as wide and as on many platforms as possible, click the link in the description to share your support. We're going to begin service shortly, so grab a Bible, grab some snacks, gather around. I want to thank you again for joining us. Enjoy the message.
To see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Your power and love as we sing holy, holy, holy. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart. In my heart, I want to see you. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing holy, holy, holy. To see you high. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I worship Your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing Your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing My strength is failing, the end draws near, and my time has come. Still my soul will sing your praise unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship Your holy name. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship Your holy name. Yes, I will worship Your holy name. Lord, I'll worship Your holy name.
Hey everyone, welcome to Life Lab. My name's Sunil. I'll be your host today. Thank you for joining us. Today I'm joined by two very special guests, my wife Jasmine and my sister Sharon. And today we have a little bit of a different topic to talk to you guys about. We're going to be sharing a little bit, or actually a lot, about the end-of-life care for my mother in the last days of her life. If any of you go to our church, you know my mother Ophelia. She passed away last year, July 23rd, 2020. She was 70 years old, and many of you that have met her have had the chance to meet her. I'm sure you loved her. She loved the church and the people here. But we want to talk about and get into a real discussion today about what really goes into taking care of someone at the end of their life, and just different experiences we had with our mom, the hardships, the struggles, the great memories, the fun we had, the laughs, and just go through different things about it. So Jasmine, Sharon, thank you guys for doing this. I'm sure everyone's interested to hear what we're going to talk about today. So our mom, my mom, Ophelia, she was, of course, a great person to me. She was the best mom in the world. But if you know anything about myself, I didn't grow up with my father around for most of my life. My mom, she took care of me most of my life, and also she raised 4 other children on top of that. I'm sure it was hard on her at times, but she was a great mom. She was smart. She was just a wonderful person to be around. And that's who she was to me. Sharon, why don't you talk a little bit about Mom?
Hello, everyone. Well,
There's so many memories and so many good things to talk about. But our mom, growing up as a child, I just remember our moms just always being there, making sure that we enjoyed life as children, taking us out to visit our family that lived in Trinidad in the countryside, because we lived in another town. She was always making sure we were taken care of. She loved us a lot. She was very, very smart, very funny. They always said she was the life of the parties, because she always had jokes to tell, or always, said something funny, made everyone laugh. She was really, really smart. Our mom was really, really smart. We was born until much later, to ask the meaning of a word, or the family would ask her questions. You know, she was just really smart. We would make fun of her, saying she was like the walking dictionary. You know, because she was always someone you could go to when you needed the meaning of a word, or you needed to start up an essay. She always had something funny, a quote, a phrase that she can help you with. But she was a loving mother, very loving mother. She was very independent. Very independent. I didn't grow up with my dad either. My mom was a single mom. She worked full time, and she took care of 4 children before Sunil came along, full time. And she was very, very independent. Didn't rely much on family or friends, but they were always there. But she, you know, worked very hard and provided everything for us, and very, very independent person.
So, hi everyone. She was my mother-in-law, so we had a very different relationship, but she was the type of person that always had time for her family and her friends. She always gave of herself to everyone, and to me. Like everyone said, she was very witty and funny. She always had a quick response for anything that anyone said to her. And she was always going somewhere, doing something. She always kept busy. She had a hard time sitting still for long periods of time, or staying home. But I have great memories with her and miss her very much.
Yeah, and so my mom, she was born in 1950. She died, like I said, last year, 2020. She was 70 years old. But we really want to get in today to the heart of what we're talking about, because my mom, throughout her life, raising 5 children, working most of her life, there were some health issues that came along with that. Naturally, if you know any mother, our mother was the same way. They're very selfless. They're always looking out for their children and not really taking care of themselves. And while my mother was a lot of the same, and she eventually developed different health problems. And forgive us if, you know, we ramble a little about different things. It's not the easiest topic to talk about, but eventually, I remember, I think I was around 8 or 9 years old when the first time I saw that she got sick. She fainted on the train in New York. That's where we lived originally. That's where I was born, and it was crazy seeing my mom fall down like that, fainting on the train. I was a little kid. I wasn't old enough or big enough to hold her up or anything, and I remember it, you know, of course I freaked out, you know, as a kid. I was crying, and from then on, at that point in my life, I remember she got different conditions. She had diabetes that developed into high blood pressure as well, and eventually heart problems, kidney problems, and different things. And so where we're going to pick up most of her story is in the year 2009. And this really started much more of a downward spiral of her health, to the point where we did have to eventually start taking care of her ourselves, or at least helping her along. So in 2009, my mom went to New York. We were living in California here. My sister Sharon was living in New York still. My mom went to visit her, and this is where a huge health problem came up. Sharon, do you want to share a little bit about the story of Mom in 2009, what happened, and all that from your perspective? Because I wasn't there.
Yes.
Well, in December of 2009, Mom was planning a vacation to come up to New York to visit. And Samantha, my niece, a teenager, a young adult at the time, was planning to come with her. But there was some back and forth, and she was coming, but then she wasn't coming. But finally, bottom line is Samantha came with Mom. So they arrived, and I'll try to make the story short. And it's going to be a little emotional for me, so I apologize. So the day after they arrived, like we were saying, like Jasmine was saying, Mom was always doing something. So just this next day, she woke up, and my uncle, who lives in New York as well, he works at a supermarket, and she wanted to go visit him first thing in the morning. So she took a walk, and she went, bought her stuff, her fruits. She loved her fruits, and she came back. And I was at work, but my niece was, calling me, telling me what's going on. And then my niece, Samantha, called me and said she was sitting in the living room, and all of a sudden she just heard a bang on the floor, and that was in the kitchen. And she called me right away and said, Grandma passed out. She was on the floor. And I was already at work, and so I said to her, well, get my neighbors are home because they work a later shift, get my neighbor who lives upstairs. And she went and called him. They called 911. And my neighbor upstairs, Stephen, he was able to give her CPR.
Yeah.
And that kept her alive until the ambulance came, just about 4 minutes. And then that, I would say, was the beginning of this whole life-changing experience. They rushed her to the hospital. They pronounced her, she lost heartbeat, she lost pulse, everything. And then they brought her back. They brought her back to life. So during the next day or so, she actually went flatline again. And at that point, when they had taken her to the hospital, they put her on induced coma. Yeah, to lower her temperatures so that they could preserve her organs. But that entire week was a roller coaster ride. She didn't lose her heartbeat once, but a couple of times, and we thought that was going to be over, but there was miracles. It was definitely miracles that week, and she made a full recovery. She made a full recovery. It was a long process, a lot of operations, and a lot of nights spent in the hospital. A lot of nights. My sister Kathy came up. Also, you came up. And we took turns. We were, someone was doing the day shift, someone was doing the night shift, but we didn't leave her. And we took turns caring for her in the hospital where it started. Many operations, the doctors given up on her, saying that, she won't be able to walk again, she won't be able to talk again. And little by little, she was able to start writing. She asked Sunil, where's my Gatorades? She wanted some Gatorades. She started writing, and she started saying a few words, and she started sitting up. Little by little, she started walking, and after heart surgery, she made a recovery, but we were able to go home after 3 months. But just that week, things started going downhill again. We had to take her back because at that point, her lungs were very, very weak.
Yeah.
Her lungs were very weak.
I remember that when she first recovered and sent her home, we had to hold her hand with her and walk very, very slowly. And this is New York City, so just from getting off of the train to the hospital she had to go to was probably more than a mile?
Yeah.
Right? More than a mile. And she would take steps, just one step, and stop for a few seconds and another step. It was crazy seeing our mom like that. And so what I really want you guys to also understand is that, and for you that heard the story, you'll hear it again, but if you haven't heard the story, it was amazing all the things that had to take place for that situation to even happen. My niece wasn't supposed to go to New York at first, so if she wasn't there, no one would have been home. My mom probably would have just died, and my sister would have found her there when she came home from work. Also, the neighbor that was home, Stephen, right?
Yes.
Is he a first responder or EMT?
No, he worked at a restaurant.
Oh,
but
okay.
He had
He had all the CPR
training,
training and
yeah.
all that, and he happened to be home at that time. Just so many things that took place for all that. And like Sharon said, when we first got there, this was in December of '09, my sister Kathy and I went to New York there, and they told all of us, like Sharon said, we don't think you should really try and resuscitate her. We're not sure what's going to happen when we do bring her back. And they were very, very doubtful, like she said. They were amazed when we walked back months later there with her, and she looked what seemed to be pretty normal. They never expected that. So let's go into some more of what we're going to talk about, because that really is the onset that set up everything that we're going to talk about today. Because of this what happened in '09, we don't know exactly how many times she technically died, but she, like Sharon said, she lost pulse a few times, and that affected her heart, of course. It affected all of her body. It affected her mind. They told us amongst different issues that she would have from then on. Of course, she had to deal with the issues she already had, the diabetes, high blood pressure, things like that. She got, I think, a double bypass surgery.
Yes.
So they had to put in also a defibrillator, pacemaker, that would help her heart beat. Of course, her heart lost capacity, so she needed help. Of course, she had to take lots of medicine now. It was completely a whole world change.
Yes.
Our world flipped 180. And if you're wondering why my wife isn't saying anything about that, well, she wasn't there yet. We didn't know her yet. But from this point on, we learned and we figured we really have to pay attention to the medicine she's taking, helping her take it. And one of the things that she did develop, because if you go any significant amount of time without oxygen and you're not breathing, it affects lots of things in your body. And one of the things it affected for her was her brain, in that she had slight dementia that developed more over time. And she would have short-term memory loss. When she woke up, she didn't remember how she got there. She didn't remember what happened. And then from then on, she could remember things from 20 years back, right? 30 years back. But if you asked her about something last week or the day before, she wouldn't remember. And it affected her that way. And so now we knew, okay, we can't expect her to remember if she took her medicine sometimes. And that's a scary thing, because some of these medications were the reason she's staying alive. She needed these medications. So it wasn't right away, because she lived 10 years more after that incident. She turned 60 that next year, 2010, and she passed when she was 70. So she lived 10 more years. For the next few years, we thought she kind of went back to normal. But we quickly realized, because of her decline in health, that she didn't go back to complete normal. And so from that point on, lots of things happened in our lives. My sister Sharon moved here to California, where we live now. I met my wife in 2011. We got married in 2013. And a little bit after that, myself, my wife, my sister, and my other family, my other sister, her kids, we had to start taking care of my mother more. And so fast forward a few years, pretty much my niece, and then eventually my wife, pretty much full time, took care of my mom where we lived. She lived with Sharon, And then my wife and I eventually, we all moved in together. And while myself, my sister were at work, my wife would take care of my mom. And so the last, I would say, 4 to 5 years? Yeah, 4 to 5 years, it was all hands on deck. My wife all day while we were at work, and then we would help and do our best. But it was kind of hard for us as her kids. If you're a young person and you have healthy parents, be grateful, because as a child, seeing your parent sick like that, it's hard. And we're going to talk about some of that. So the first question I want us to address, or I want to ask all of us, is what are some misconceptions we had? Because I had never taken care of anyone that was sick in this way, right? Have you?
No, I haven't.
No. What about you?
Yeah, so when I was around 8 years old, my grandfather, who in the late 70s had a really bad car accident, and it left him with actually very similar things to Ophelia. He had a lot of brain damage after that and short-term memory loss. He had limited mobility, and he couldn't really do a lot for himself. So that's the only way I ever knew my grandfather. And like I said, when I was 8 years old, he came to live with me and my family. So I actually have a lot of experience and saw firsthand just the toll that it takes on a family, the amount of patience that you have to deal with somebody in that situation. And yeah, so I didn't have a lot of misconceptions, but I will say that it is very different to care for somebody as an adult as opposed to viewing it from a child's perspective. You know, when you're a child, you can go and play and have fun and be a kid, and you're not really burdened with those things day to day. But as an adult, it is different seeing, you know, you have to have a level of responsibility and you know, just being on top of things and taking care of them and making sure that everything's, you know, going smoothly. So I have a lot of respect for my parents in that they took care of him for, I think, 14 or 15 years, just day in and day out, and they saw, you know, the good and the bad and the ugly, and it did take a toll on us as a family, and they had a lot of patience with him. So yeah, I have a lot of experience.
Yeah. And we could tell, right?
Yes.
Because, and none of us are perfect or anything like that, but we could tell that my wife had experience with that, because I know for myself, I'll speak for myself, it was hard. There were times where I got really frustrated, but my wife had a lot of patience, and you know, we knew where that came from doing that. Especially with her mother-in-law. you can expect, right, for a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law, not everyone expects them to get along or anything like that. But my wife did a great job of taking care of my mother. I don't know if I would have survived being home all day with my mom. And that's the truth. And if my mom was here, she would laugh at that and say, you know, she was a wild thing, and she would make fun of me or something like that. But it was true. The relationship I had with my mom, I don't know if I could have been at home doing that every day, day in and day out. But my wife was able to. So what about do you have any misconceptions about taking care of mom?
Yeah, well, I didn't, like
Jasmine's situation, I moved to New York from Trinidad at a young age. So I didn't really get to be around my grandparents who passed away, and then my dad who passed away. So I didn't really have any of that experience with any of my other family. So I didn't really know what to expect. You know, you would hear about what my aunties or what the family is going through, but I didn't experience it personally. And then having a mom like ours, who's very independent and does everything herself, does not wait on anyone. You know, I never saw her as needing help or dependent on us. So that all changed eventually because, as Sunil was saying, with her losing some of her memory, you realize that we didn't know if she took her medicine or not. Because, for the first few years, she was still taking her medicine. We had everything. She had everything planned out, all her pills, all her insulin and whatnot, but I didn't really need to be involved in that. But after, the last 4 or 5 years, we realized that, wow, we need to get more involved, making sure that she took her medicine. And even when it came to things that she would eat, having to then say to mom, that mom, this might not be the best choice. Yeah, because, right, and it's not that you want to control, but you want her to have, what it's doing to her, these type of sicknesses. So, you want to try to help her in any way to live longer and to have a healthier life, because it's definitely not a good feeling when you see a mom sick in the hospital and having to go through all that pain and, So, yeah, it was definitely a experience for me and definitely mind-changing.
Yeah, I would say the same for me. There are lots of misconceptions. Sometimes, at least I feel like the way my family was brought up, we were very close, tight-knit. That sometimes it could be a good thing or a bad thing. But when my mom
started getting sick like this, you hear a lot of stories of people, just putting their parents in a home or, whatever, a facility, whatever you want to call it, hospice. Well, not hospice, but, somewhere where other people can take care of them and they come and visit them. And, I'm not here to, badmouth anyone that did that or put shame to anyone that did that. But for us and our family, we never wanted to do that to our mom. I remember as a kid always telling my mom I would take care of her, and I believe I was spiritually convicted even that, this was a way to honor my mother, was to take care of her. And of course I couldn't do it by myself. We all did it together, and so there's definitely lots of misconceptions about how hard it would have been, how hard it was. Of course you love someone, so you think naturally, well, to take care of them, you want to take care of them, which we did want to, and I did want to. But it's hard, like Sharon said, seeing someone you love suffer like that, and someone that you've always looked to being weak now. I'll share a funny story, actually. I don't know how old I was. I think I was like 8, and I went to the beach with Sharon when I was younger. And I was a big baby. I thought I was tough, but I got sunburned for the first time, okay? This is how I remember my mom a lot, okay? And I'm this, big 8-year-old kid, okay? I probably, I'm like, 5 feet tall already. I'm huge, maybe 4 foot something. But I'm a big kid. Well, I went to the beach and I got sunburned. Well, I had never had sunburn before. I thought my arm was broken because it was hurting so bad, okay? I'm literally screaming, my arm's broken, Mom, my arm's broken. And she's like touching it and checking it, and I'm just screaming, so she thinks, man, maybe it is broken. My mom pretty much had to carry me to the train station in New York at 8 years old, take me to the hospital, because I think my arm's broken. It's like, I think 11 at night or something, right? It's like nighttime. And the doctor's kid takes x-rays and all this stuff, and he's like, there's nothing wrong with him. And she's like, what do you mean there's nothing wrong with him? And so the doctor's like, checking, he shows her the x-rays, tells her there's nothing broken. And he said, I don't know. And he looks at my skin, and it's really red, and he touches it, and I start screaming. He's like, I think he has sunburn. And my mom, she was so mad at me. Oh my gosh. She would not stop yelling at me the whole way home. In a good, I needed that. I had sunburn. I didn't have a broken arm. But she was, it was late at night. But I remember, times like that, I thought I broke my arm, obviously, as a little kid, but she carried me all the way to the hospital pretty much. This is the kind of person now that I'm seeing that can't remember certain things, or sometimes couldn't get out of bed on her own. And towards the more end of her life, recently, like last year, couldn't even stand up anymore. Couldn't do daily things that we all take for granted. She couldn't do them anymore. You fill in the blank, everything. Even, we literally at the end of her life last year, because she did come home on hospice care at the end of her life. We had to do everything for her. We were the nurses, and the nurse's assistant or whatever. We were the LVNs. We were everything. We did everything for her, and so it was a crazy experience. It was something that was hard. There were days that, I'm sure we all, had times where we weren't sure if we were going to be able to make it doing this. What were some of the positives and negatives, you could talk about either or, of taking care of mom?
For me, some of the positive things were just being able to have time with her, more memories that can be made with her, and just having a peace and knowing that we did everything that we could to help her, to make her life easier. And then some of the negative things, I guess, I think our mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relationship suffered a little bit because of it. Well, I'll be honest, a lot because of it. I think we mentioned before, just having to be in a role of, somewhat authority over this person that, is supposed to be, it's just supposed to be a different relationship, I think.
I should have said that too. It was hard on her.
Yeah,
it was really hard on my mom, looking at us trying to advise her what to eat, or what to drink, or especially like my wife, having to give her medicine. Sometimes she thought she already took it, or she would try to take it, right?
Yeah. Or she would think I would be double dosing her or something, but I would see that the medicine was still there.
Yeah.
Things like that, it caused our relationship to be strained, but also I think we over time grew a deeper appreciation for each other, just knowing that we were always together for the most part. Those last year, like maybe the last year or two, we spent a lot of time together, going places, doctor's appointments and stuff. So there was good and there was bad as far as our relationship, but
excuse me, there was a lot of positives, taking care of mom, and like Sunil mentioned, our family is pretty close family, and we probably joked around about putting her in a home, and when it got really bad at times, but the positive,
definitely is caring for her and being able to take care of our mom, our entire family, being there for her, spending time, and hearing stories, and just being able to talk to her. And we were so fortunate enough to be able to give them time to spend with her. So many families lose their loved ones within a blink of the eye, and we were fortunate enough to have our mom for a whole month. 2 months. 2 months with us, so that so caring for her, given that opportunity was definitely a positive. But during that time, it wasn't all positive. It was definitely, a lot of negative, and her being upset at me because I'm trying to help her with her diet or cook something healthier, and taking away those Cheeto puffs or whatever she's trying to hide and eat. There's definitely a lot of negatives, but at the end of the day, just given the time and knowing that we were able to care for her and help her for the last 2 months has best as we can is definitely, positive for me.
Yeah. And I think too, you're saying about Cheetos and cream soda and all that. It reminds me too that, on a little bit serious note too, that if you're a mom or a dad, take care of yourself. Because it was very hard on us. And also, whether you're a young person as well, do your best to take care of your parents. Because we don't know how long we had. Realistically, when she came home on hospice, they thought she would live maybe a week last year. This was, I think, at the end of May. But she lived 2 more months, which was great. But yeah, for me, positives and negatives, the positive was, like I said, for me, like Sharon said and Jasmine said, being able to take care of someone, though it's hard at times, it's very fulfilling to know that that we were there taking care of her. You hear all these horror stories sometimes of people who are at facilities or homes and people are hurting them or different things like that. And we never wanted that for our mom, and we got to, she got to stay with us until, the day she passed away. And so for me, I'm going to go straight into the next thing too, which is how it affected our daily lives. And so for me, like I said, I think for myself, I didn't have to deal with my mom as much because I had to go to work. And my wife, I don't envy that job of taking care of my mom completely, because it would have been very hard for me, like I feel like. So my daily life, I went to work and came home and got to see my mom later in the day. But it did affect me, every day thinking about, how much longer she may have, or, at the last part of her life, I was working at home because of the pandemic. It is hard, detaching yourself from that. Mentally, spiritually, physically, all these things, it's draining. It was very draining. There were times, especially at the end, when she was on hospice at home, that sometimes she would be up all night, right? She would be up all night sometimes in pain, or she couldn't sleep, different things like that. Babe, why don't you talk about a little bit about like your daily life with her? You spend a lot more time with her during the day.
Yeah. So it was, like everyone said, very challenging. Just having to deal with new challenges every day, pretty much. But mentally, it was, I don't think you guys give yourself enough credit, because there was a lot of times when, during the day, I would have to call one of you, because it was situations getting out of hand, her dementia, sometimes not even being able to find her, coming out of my room and she was gone.
Right.
It took a toll on me. I'm sure it took a toll on you guys being at work and having to get that phone call, like, I don't know where she went. Or just having to calm her down because she was, so agitated or frustrated about, certain things that we would have to do with her. And, sometimes I wouldn't know how to deal with those situations, even having experience with, seeing somebody in that condition. Like I said earlier, it's much different having to deal with it as an adult than as a child. I just watched my mom and my dad do it a lot with my grandfather, but now I was in, right there in the middle of the situation, and sometimes not knowing how to deal with it. Sometimes Sharon talked to her better than I could and communicated with her better than I could, and sometimes Sunil could do it better than I could. So I would have to call them at work and get, advice, or have them talk to her, because, sometimes situations would get out of hand. Yeah. And I think that's something that maybe a lot of people don't think about when it comes to like dementia patients. Sometimes agitations run very high, but there were a lot of challenges. It was hard day to day, just to not know what kind of mood she was going to be in, or what things that day, had in store. So it was kind of, it was a roller coaster ride,
Yeah.
to put it nicely, I guess.
Yeah, and some of you may be watching and wondering, well, why don't you get her one of those bracelets, or, you should know, that she has dementia, she'll go out of the house or something like that. The truth is she was still so smart that she passed all the cognitive tests at the doctors. So there was nothing officially that a doctor could say that she had she had slight dementia, that was it. But that would, like my wife said, and like we've said, she'd always like going walking in New York and things like that. And out here, sometimes she would want to do that. She would just leave the house without telling anyone. And, she'd go to the store or whatever. We'd find her, or eventually, she knew where she was and all that stuff. But it was definitely, challenging in those times, being at work, getting those phone calls. What about you, Sharon?
Yeah, I would have to agree with you guys. It was not easy, and you guys are probably going to hear that
A few more times during this conversation, but it definitely wasn't easy mentally, spiritually, physically. It was not easy. I would, mentally, I would sometimes literally feel like running away. Like I just need to run away and never come back because it was so hard on me. And there were some good days, but there were some bad days that I would tell myself I just want to run away. But having a strong support group like our family, my sister, her kids, and even my brother and sister in Trinidad, and even my mom's siblings, being able to call them, and getting support, definitely helps. So having a support group, a strong support group there when you need it, like Jasmine said, excuse me, being able to call someone, reach out to someone, in that moment, because it's all different. One day you can have a good day, but another day, like my brother could be having a bad day. So, it takes turns. It takes a turns.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, definitely has its moments, and I'm gonna skip one of the questions. I'm gonna save it for last. Well, I want to move to ultimately, Sharon, why don't you go first? And what was like the low point? Like you said, you felt like some days you just wanted to run away. Was there a specific day or something where something happened where it was like absolutely you felt at your lowest when you were doing all this?
For me, that would be the end of May of 2020. Mom was, getting sick like every other month, a few times a month, and so the end of May, during the pandemic, we were able to get a hospital visit to go see our doctor, and we were there trying to get some advice and see what to do. And I remember they couldn't let all of us go together. We were in one building, and then to take her over to the ER we had to go through another building. So everyone decided, okay, I was going to stay with her and transition from that point to the other location. But she was in a wheelchair, and she couldn't walk, couldn't stand up. But for me, I would say that had to really be one of the lowest points, because by then, 10 years later, you grew some patience. You grew some patience even through the hard times, but at that moment I realized that my mom needed a lot of help. And I had to help her and be there for her, and that was that was the lowest point. She needed to use the restroom, and I had to help her. And I was by myself, you guys were not there. I didn't have anybody else to help me, and it was hard. It was hard, but that was definitely my lowest point, realizing that the end was drawing near. The end was drawing near for me. You know, being with my mom.
Yeah. Well, what was, I guess, the high point?
I know, you know, talking about all the sadness and then you want to, and you ask, what was the high point? Well, there is, you know, at the end of every tunnel, there is some light. The high point would be having our mom home with us for 2 months, and having the opportunity to talk to her about heaven, singing songs with her, spending time together in
her room, all of us laughing, all her great grandchildren, my sister, her kids, my nieces, my nephew, my daughter. There would be times where all of us would pack into that one room and just hang out and laugh, and I can just hear her laughter right now. That would be the high point for me, having that opportunity.
Maybe do you want to talk about a low point and a high point?
Yeah, for me, a low point was around the same time Sharon said, but for me it was the day she came home from the hospital on hospice. And it was that for me because before she went into hospice, before she went into the hospital visit that Sharon was talking about, she could still walk, you know, she could still feed herself, she could go to the bathroom. You know, she was having a harder time, definitely, but when she came home from the hospital, all of that changed, and she was pretty much bedridden. She could not stand on her own. She could not feed herself. She couldn't hold a spoon. And it was just nonstop, just as much care as you can think you could give somebody. That's what she needed at that time. So for me, it was very hard, very physically draining. Just any kind of draining you can think of, it was. So that was a low point for me, was just seeing this woman that, like we have said, you know, previously, so independent, just wanting to do everything on her own. Just to see that drastic change, I felt like it was night and day, one day to the next. Just, you know, she needed every kind of help that you could think you could give somebody, and that was a low point for me. And also very similarly to Sharon, just the amount of time that we had with her, to pray with her, to talk to her, to say sorry for, you know, past offenses, to hear that she has forgiven us for our past offenses to her. That was a high point for me, just knowing that, you know, everything was covered, you know. There were no regrets, I think, as far as I'm concerned, just because I know, not only do I know that I did my best with what I knew at that time, but just hearing her say, you know, I love you, Jasmine, I forgive you, you know, being able to ask for her forgiveness, you can't put a price on that. Those are some of the best words that you can hear, you know. Hearing her say that she knew I tried my hardest and I did the most that I could for her, was a high point for me.
I'm going to go a little quick here just for the sake of time, but the low point for me was the day the hospital called me, and I'm the youngest, by the way, of 5, but when it came to these situations, I kind of was voted as the oldest, because a lot of the decisions ultimately were on me. And the big decision was, the doctor called last year in May and said that they don't think she's going to live much longer. Do I want to bring her home on hospice, or do I want to leave her in the hospital? And they said, if she stays in the hospital, he said, she won't last another week. But then they said, if we bring her home, maybe she'll last 2 weeks. Well, we brought her home and she lasted 2 months, but that phone call kind of like made me lose it a little. Um, you hear the story in the Bible where Jesus was sweating blood, and I'm not Jesus and I didn't sweat blood, but I cried so much I think my nose started bleeding, and I'm not being theatrical or anything about it, but that was the truth. I just couldn't contain myself. My mom, I really, I didn't know what I was going to do. At that point, that was the low, but I think I will agree with both of them, and that the high point of all this is that a lot of people, like Sharon mentioned earlier, they lose their life and that's it. And if you've gone through that, I'm sorry. And I hope that, you find comfort in Christ and in family. But for us, even though there was a pandemic last year, for us, it was like the best thing that could have happened. We were able to spend day in and day out talking to her, loving on her, like Jasmine said, asking for forgiveness. Her forgiving us forgiving her, different things, talking about things, talking through things that we may not have considered to do in the moment. All right, these are things that we sometimes pass by every day. We pass by our loved ones at home, our mom or dad, whoever they may be, our children, wife, husband, and we just think they'll be there. Well, we were faced with the reality that any day now she wouldn't be there. And so all of us took time to talk to her, and tell her how much we loved her. And like Sharon said, and Jasmine said, pray with her. We know she believed in Jesus. She was saved. And that is ultimately the most reassuring thing, And she thought I was famous. She would see me on YouTube. She didn't really understand what YouTube is. So she would see me for church when we would be streaming our services. She thought I was famous. She thought I was on TV. And those were great moments, ultimately, that we got to do that with our mom. Even though in a time like that, we were still able to have those moments with her. And so, for the sake of time, I'm just going to take time here to end it. I just want to give you guys a few scriptures before I end it. John 15:13 says, "Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends." Matthew 22:39 says about the law, the commandments. "The second commandment is like it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself." Galatians 6:2, "Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ." And I think, despite life and despite working full-time jobs and family and church and everything, that we did our best to love our mom, and she told us that. And I want to challenge anyone watching to love the people around you, because you never know when they won't be here anymore. That's a cliche we hear. You don't know what you have until it's gone. Well, it's very true. I believe a week and a half ago or so was the 1-year anniversary of when she passed away, July 23rd. And you don't know. Sometimes I find myself almost like forgetting what she sounded like for a second. And I watch a video and of course I remember it, but it's hard because someone's not around anymore. I want to challenge you to love the people around you. And if you don't know Christ's love, I want to challenge you to give your life to Jesus. Get saved. I believe fully that there's no way any of this would have been possible without Jesus in our lives. And so if you're not saved, I want to challenge you, give your life to Christ. You can repeat this prayer after me if you'd like to give your life to Christ. Say, "Jesus, I invite you into my heart. I give you my life right now. I believe that you died on the cross and rose again in 3 days. I believe in you as my Savior, and I invite you into my heart. Forgive me of my sins. In Jesus' name, amen." Amen. If you did that, I want to challenge you, find a church, the Potter's House, Moreno Valley. We're here. You can find our information in our links or on our Facebook or YouTube page. I just want to challenge you, as I said, love one another. Take care of those around you. Because that's really ultimately what we have in life. Money, jobs, cars, material things come and go. But the people around us, especially our loved ones, will be here forever. They'll be in our hearts forever. So with that, I just want to thank you guys for watching tonight, enjoying the Life Lab. God bless you. Until next time.